people coming on board, a very good turnout. We're very thrilled about that. And we're going to just talk a little bit as we get the show started. We're going to officially kick off in 2 minutes, but we've got Will Maynez from Maynez from, thank you, Will, from City College. And Will, we were talking about the space where the Pan American Unity mural is being shown at SFMOMA. And what do you think of that space?
Oh, I'm in love with that space. That's the Roberts Family Gallery. It's free to the public. It's all glass enclosed. The other day, coming back from a Giants night game, at 11 o'clock, I could stop by and visit the mural and see it from outside through the glass facade. So, and also the mural's really low. It's about a foot off the ground. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Oh, that's great. And you were at one of these Giants games. That doesn't really have a lot to do with art, but I happen to be a big baseball fan myself, and kind of what a great way to combine two passions.
Oh yeah. Well, it's kind of funny. As some of the young Mexican engineers who came here and worked on this project sent me a picture. They went to a Giants game and they must have spent a fortune on all the Giants regalia, but it looked like they had a good time and the Giants won.
Los Gigantes, we call them, right?
Los Gigantes.
Yeah. I think it's not unfair to say that Diego Rivera hit a home run or even maybe a grand slam with Pan American Unity. It's such an amazing artwork and so thrilling to have it in our downtown area now. And we're going to be, this is going to be the first of 2 shows where we talk about Pan American Unity.
Hi, William and Rodney and Nicky.
Yeah. Someone's asking for transcription of this meeting. Is that okay with everybody?
That's mine, Rodney. Hi, Rodney.
Hi, Paco.
Hello.
So we've got Paco with us. It is 1 o'clock, and why don't we go ahead and get started? And Nicky, you are our official host from the Community Living Campaign. Also, you provided us with this photograph that we're looking at. What are we looking at here, Nicky?
Thank you, Rodney. It's such a pleasure to be here today with you. Hi, Paco. And with my old friend, Bill Maynez from City College. And we've known each other for years. And it's just such a pleasure to be doing this with you today. So my name is Nicky Trasvina, and I wanted to share this old picture from 1939. The lady in the middle is my mom, Carmen, and the lady to her right is my aunt, Esperanza. And they were volunteering and working at the 1939 World's Fair here at Treasure Island. Their father, my grandfather, Felipe Nicolas Puente, was a very well-established leader from the Mexican community in San Francisco. He was the general agent of the National Railways of Mexico at that time. So a lot of people knew our family, and they were always invited to a lot of events and representing, Mexico, even though, they had all become citizens. But anyhow, they got to participate in this fair, and my parents would always talk about the World's Fair with so much love and such great memories, because that was the peak of their youth, because as right after that, the war started and everything changed in their lives. So this was the peak of their youth and the happiness that they got to share with so many people. So thank you for letting me share this picture with you. And I'm so excited about this presentation today from the Community Living Campaign. Let me first tell you a little bit about us. We advocate for seniors and people with disabilities in San Francisco. We're a nonprofit serving San Francisco, and we bring you lots of different presentations on art, writing, information for seniors, exercise, Chinese yoga. We have a tremendous amount of programming, 6 and even sometimes 7 days a week. So we encourage you to look at our website. But today is very special because we couldn't have a more expert person on the mural, the keeper of the mural, the steward of the mural, as he's called, Bill Maynez. So I'm just wanting to get on with the program and let you take over from now, Rodney. Thank you.
Yeah, just want to welcome everybody to Art Viewing Adventures. We've been actually doing this for over a year since the start of the pandemic. But today's show is a really special one for me. It was before the pandemic that I got to see Will speak about Pan American Unity and Diego Rivera. He came and spoke to the museum guides at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And he got me really excited about that artwork. But I have to say that since seeing it at SFMOMA, it's exceeded all of my expectations. It is just a magnificent space. And so, Will, really thrilled to have you on our program. And I see we have a big turnout. So lots of people excited to hear more about this. Basically, I would call it a masterpiece and one of the probably greatest artworks ever created in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's my opinion, but we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it, Will. So welcome to Art Viewing Adventures.
Oh, I'm sorry. May I interrupt just for a second? I want to let our audience know that we are recording this. So, if anybody wishes to not have their camera or their name seen and recorded, please shut down your camera and maybe remove your name.
Oh, and let me also add that Will's going to be presenting to us. But then later on, we're going to have a chance for you guys to give input and ask questions. And I will be monitoring chat. And we can also allow you to unmute and speak if you can raise your hand and let us call on you. That's always the best way to do that. But take it away, Will. Tell us all about Pan American Unity.
Okay, let me.
You go ahead and share your slides.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to.
And I'm happy to help. Am I still sharing mine? No. There we go.
Have you got my screen up there?
I do. I see the magnificent mural.
Okay, and I even have the right date. I just had to change the date right now because we switched dates. Well, good afternoon. I'm Will Maynez, and I'm honored to be asked to make a presentation to you. I've been collecting stories on Diego Rivera's Pan American Unity mural for going on 25 years. So I'm just a storyteller. I'd like to acknowledge my late Rivera research partner of 20 years, Julia Bergman. She passed away just shortly before SFMOMA approached us with an offer to borrow the mural. And it didn't seem fair until I recognized that she still had my back from beyond. So thank you, my dear. The mural is now at SFMOMA and, as we said, open to the public for free in the Roberts Family Gallery on the Howard Street side of the museum. I'd also like to acknowledge Nilda Gempel. Over a decade ago, she and the late Herb Gempel approached me and offered their help. And as I discovered, you can't find your fairy godmother. She's got to find you. My friend Don Ross, a photographer at SFMOMA, will do a Zoom talk on the actual mural move to the museum in a couple of weeks. So my talk will be on major themes in the mural, some stories, and then some questions and answers. But first, a little background. San Francisco is Diego Rivera land, with 3 large fresco murals and a smaller fresco out at UC Berkeley. Our city has the greatest collection of Rivera murals anywhere outside of Mexico. And 2 local citizens were the main movers in Rivera's visits. Whoops. There you go. Albert Bender started brokering Rivera's easel work in San Francisco in 1926 without taking a commission. St. Albert, as he was fondly known, grub-staked many artists like Ansel Adams, who got offers to buy his books before he had taken the photographs. A letter addressed to St. Albert, San Francisco, was once delivered. But when I first started researching Albert Bender years ago, I didn't get it. Here's a diminutive guy from Dublin, Ireland, a dapper insurance salesman, and yet reportedly he's tithing 90% of his income to support artists. Well, as I later found out, yes, he was from Dublin, Ireland, and naturally the son of a rabbi. His insurance clients included Levi Strauss and Company. Bender had heard about Rivera from local talented sculptor Ralph Stackpole, who had known Rivera in Paris in 1907. And Bender would figure significantly in the creation of the San Francisco Museum of Art, which is today SFMOMA, and its great initial collection of Rivera's easel art. Frida's wedding portrait, let me get a pointer here. Frida's wedding portrait, one of SFMOMA's prized possessions, is dedicated to Albert Bender in this little scroll work up here, and was his gift to the fledgling museum. And recently I discovered some interesting details about the genesis of this painting. Timothy Pfluger was one of San Francisco's premier architects, and he influences much of our story of Diego Rivera in San Francisco. I call him my homie because he lived all his life in a house which is just around the corner from me here in San Francisco's Mission District. Pfluger created 140 New Montgomery, the Art Moderne Pacific Telephone and Telegraph building, which is right behind MoMA. Today it's Yelp headquarters. He created 450 Sutter, the medical building with the neo-Mayan motif. And so as we can tell, even before Rivera arrived, Pfluger was already looking towards Mexico. He designed the look and feel of the Bay Bridge's western expanse from the city over to Yerba Buena Island. They're all depicted in the mural. And these Pfluger creations, including the Paramount Theater, the Castro Theater, are well preserved today because somebody cares about them. So in the late 1920s, plans began to develop to get Diego Rivera to San Francisco. And finally, on November 10th, 1930, Diego Rivera and his new wife, Frida Kahlo, arrived by train. Well, on this first visit to San Francisco, Diego Rivera initially worked with Pfluger at what was then the Pacific Stock Exchange Lunch Club, which is now the Private City Club, in Pfluger's Stock Exchange Tower at 155 Sansom. Now, this is allegory of California, and it's a celebration of the riches of our state. But some people thought it strange that a communist was painting in this temple to capitalism. The central figure was modeled by San Francisco tennis star Helen Wills as Queen Calafia, ruler of the mythical island of California in an old 1500 Spanish novel. But Diego and Frida took a trip up to Santa Rosa to the home of Luther Burbank, who had died in 1926. Diego included him right here. He was an agronomist, and Frida did a portrait of him at the same time. Diego also included scenes from mines that he had seen personally up in Grass Valley. Well, this mural continues to the ceiling as Diego encompassed the whole stairwell between the 10th and the 11th floors of this lunchroom. Helen Wills is repeated as the nude flying figure in the ceiling. She's kind of like Supergirl without the suit. Now, this image of motion is coupled and forms a duality with this image of stasis. Now, this smaller figure is an example of perspective anamorphosis, a technique which dates back to the early Italian Renaissance. And if you're at the City Club, depending on what angle you look at that figure, it changes gender. And of course, androgyny is just another form of duality, which we will see is a major theme in Rivera's work. The female flying figure, it will be referenced again in Pan-American Unity. Well, Diego and Frida then took a 6-week break at the Atherton home of Mrs. Rosalie Stern. She was the widow of Sigmund Stern, and she's the one that donated Stern Grove to the city. Rosalie was the owner of Levi Strauss and a dear friend of Albert Bender. Well, Diego painted this small portable fresco, still life with blossoming almond trees. It now resides at Stern Hall at UC Berkeley. Diego called the tractor right back here the hyphen between agriculture and industry, another duality. Well, this mural was Diego's homage to Van Gogh's blossoming almond trees, and it featured Elise Haas's children. Those were Rosalie Stern's grandchildren. So we got Walter A. Haas over here, we got Peter E. Haas here, and we got Rhoda Haas right here. And by the way, this little girl right here is Rhoda's imaginary friend, whom Diego added at Rhoda's request. Rhoda, of course, grew up to be philanthropist Rhoda Haas Goldman. This mural will be part of next summer Diego Rivera's America, a show that SFMOMA is putting on. And that show will feature 175 works by Rivera from the 1920s into the 1940s. Well, while in Atherton, Rivera designed his next commission for the California School of Fine Arts, which today is the San Francisco Art Institute. And he painted this mural in the single month of May 1931 because the Mexican president wanted him to come home and finish projects he was being paid for there. Though actually in the background, the central figure in this mural is a male. And all the San Francisco murals have the main figure on the central vertical axis. Well, this central figure prefigures the 1933 man at the crossroad at the Rockefeller Center, his hands on the controls of the machine. And said to be alluding to Charles Lindbergh, the figure symbolized the dream of what a modern industrialized civilization could be. However, the mural was destroyed in 1935. So here, Rivera created a fresco within a fresco within an art school. There are layers of dualistic ambiguity as we try to ascertain at what level of reality any given figure exists. Like Diego, for instance. The guy here in the middle, William Gerstle, he was the head of the San Francisco Art Association, and he paid the $1,500 commission. Now, he hadn't even initially liked the Rivera painting that Ralph Stackpole gave him in 1929, but then, to his amazement, it started to grow on him. Since the mural's theme is the building of a city, Rivera featured 4 architects. We have Timothy Pfluger, Arthur Brown Jr., Michael Goodman, and Geraldine Colby Frick. Rivera had said that he would have been an architect if he hadn't been an artist. Well, some people took the view that Diego was mooning the audience. This is Diego up here. But the theory makes no sense. The direct object of his disrespect would have been his friends depicted below him. And you know, there had been an initial resentment to an outsider, a foreigner, getting such prestigious commissions in a town where artists were going hungry. However, soon artists realized that Diego had energized the local scene to the benefit of all. Eventually, he would do this nationally. Well, the 1930s were a tumultuous time because of the Depression, but it was also the time of the Conservation Corps and the WPA Federal Art Project, modeled specifically on Rivera's work. The Golden Gate and Bay Bridges were built, and civic leaders decided to host the Golden Gate International Exposition, the GGIE, to celebrate the completion of the bridges. The fair would create jobs and promote excitement about the Bay Area. But the first season of the fair in 1939 ended badly. The fair lost money, and its future was jeopardized when World War II broke out on September 1st, 1939. Some countries had to bail on the fair. Well, there was a lot of money invested in the infrastructure of the fair, even if it was just temporary construction. So late in December of 1939, despite the war, it was decided to have a second abbreviated season. But the European art from the first season, including Botticelli's Venus and works by Albrecht Dürer and Da Vinci, had been crated up and started a long, strange trip home. Pfluger had an idea. He proposed having an art in action program. Artists would work and the public could come and watch. And to anchor this program, Pfluger wanted his buddy, Mexican muralist Diego Rivera, to paint a mural. Well, this is the view from Diego Rivera's scaffolding. Pfluger was at the time constructing the science building out at the new San Francisco Junior College, which is now City College of San Francisco. The collaboration of the fair and the WPA gave Pfluger a means to acquire a mural and other pieces of art, despite the college not having an art budget. The Hermann Volz mosaic murals on the north and south porticos of the science building are from Art in Action. That's them across the room being started. Diego would climb the scaffolding daily of Hermann Volz's mural to be able to get a long view of his mural. Pfluger's next project at the college was to be a grand library for which he wanted Rivera's mural. And to make the mural portable, the upper panels were about 14 feet, 9 inches square, the largest panel which could be crated and still be brought across the Bay Bridge standing up. And you have to remember, in those days, the upper deck of the Bay Bridge was bi-directional for autos, and the lower decks were for trains and buses. Well, the lower panels were just half the height. The Art in Action program was in the Palace of Fine Arts, really just an airplane hangar, now Building 3 on Treasure Island, and the curved entrance is still visible today on California Avenue. So the terminal building, that curved building, and the two hangars were the only permanent structures. They were slated to be the airport for the China Clippers once the fair ended. All the rest of the buildings for the fair would be razed by the Navy when they took over the island as World War II broke out for our country. Well, not being able to sustain a two-front war, Hitler had signed a non-aggression pact with his mortal enemy Stalin just a week before Germany invaded Poland. 16 days later, Stalin got his chunk of Poland. Well, so much for non-aggression. Rivera wrote articles about how very cynical this pact was. Both Stalin and Hitler coveted the same territory. So the only question was, who was going to throw the sucker punch? In Mexico, Diego became a target both for the communists and the Nazis, who didn't want the reality of the situation advertised. The FBI translated Rivera's articles and thought he might be assassinated or kicked out of Mexico. A year and a half later, as Diego predicted, Hitler invaded Russia. A bad move. He obviously hadn't heard of a guy named Napoleon. Russia was like the Roach Motel. You can check in, but you probably won't check out. So this offer from Pfluger to come to San Francisco again came at a very good time. Here was Rivera's chance to promote Pan-Americanism. But just before Diego came to San Francisco, there was an assassination attempt by Stalinist hitmen on Leon Trotsky, who had gotten asylum in Mexico in 1937 through Rivera's intervention. Diego had to go into hiding before leaving Mexico City. Significantly, his 2 visits to San Francisco are the bookends of all the time Diego Rivera spent working in the US. The question always arises in my mind, what might have happened? What might the difference have been if Diego had first started to work somewhere else, like Los Angeles, for example? When he returned to Mexico in 1941, he complained bitterly to Frida about how poorly he was treated there compared to San Francisco. Well, at its most accessible level, the Pan American Unity mural is a postcard snapshot of San Francisco in 1940 as an era closed. The sweeping aerial view depicts the city's modest skyline. Over on the left, that Pacific Telephone Telegraph building at 140 New Montgomery was the tallest building in San Francisco at 435 feet high. You know, using rubble in its mortar, the city had rebuilt itself after the 1906 earthquake. 33 years later, on an artificial treasure island, the Golden Gate International Exposition celebrated the 2 new bridges across the bay, but unknowingly signaled the end of an era in the city's history. San Francisco luminaries Albert Bender and Timothy Pfluger helped shape our story and passed on. Their efforts helped bring Rivera to San Francisco and saw him off after his 1940 work at the GGIE. Like belts, the bridges cinched in the landscape. All of a sudden, the East Bay and the North Bay were more readily accessible. With World War II, the Bay became the portal to the Pacific for millions of soldiers. Many others from all over the country were drawn here for the work available at the shipyards, the arsenals of democracy, and sloughing off its past, the city would transform itself into its next incarnation. Well, a few more incarnations have transformed the city in the time since. Well, I'm going to throw out some general themes encoded in the mural. For example, if you like metaphors and ironies, this is your mural. The GGIEs celebrated the completion of the 2 new bridges across the bay, and Rivera made the mural a metaphorical bridge between Mexico and the US. It was an irony that Diego, as a Mexican and as a communist, found that his natural ally was the United States. It was an irony that Hitler and Stalin, mortal enemies, made themselves allies. It certainly confused many communists who had been repeatedly told that Hitler was the devil. Certainly, no one was killing more communists than Hitler. The inept assassins managed to miss Trotsky, and Diego went into hiding. Ironically, he was both a suspect in the assassination attempt and a likely next target. As my buddy Julia Bergman used to say, you can teach anything with this mural. The mural is infused with historic DNA. Diego wove genetic algorithms into the mural's fabric, patterns which repeat themselves through time. And though these algorithms are deterministic, their outcomes are not necessarily predictable. For example, a single instruction set by artist Saul LeWitt can manifest itself as unique drawings at multiple venues. Dualities, the necessity of the other, or yin yang in other cultures, is a major theme and permeates this mural. Diego must have had an idea in his head from the start, because one of his first requests of Timothy Pfluger while he was signing the contract in Mexico was to have someone start doing research on Samuel Morse, who invented the telegraph and Morse code and obliterated time. and on Robert Fulton, who made a working steamboat and obliterated space. Both these great inventors were painters. So Rivera made the reconciliation of art and science an overarching theme in the mural. And this resonated with me because though I'm trained as a painter, I spent 33 years managing the physics labs at City College. You know, Rivera looked on US technology as a means for Mexico to reap the benefits of its revolution. Like Marx, he believed that the real revolution would happen in a modern industrialized country. As a dualistic counterpoint to Morse and Fulton, on the left side of the mural over here, Rivera depicted the Aztec king Netzahualcoyotl, a warrior poet, who, according to tradition, invented a flying machine. And the bat next to him may be a reference to the animal that Da Vinci modeled his flying machine on. The mural is called The Marriage of the Artistic Expression of the North and of the South on this continent. We call it Pan American Unity for short. Since Rivera had no time to prepare in Mexico, he designed the mural in just 7 weeks once he arrived in San Francisco. It's an extemporaneous on-site invention, and he would paint the entire work in just 4 months. It's a fresco. It's painted in the old tradition with earth ground pigments on wet plaster. This technique is very rigorous because the artist must work long hours and have supreme confidence because it's so hard to hide mistakes. And by the way, that darn plaster is drying. It's almost as if the technique has to choose and anoint the artist. The marriage is a duality fusing Mexico and the US and is represented by this center figure here, which fuses the Aztec goddess Coatlicue on the left side with a stamping machine he'd previously painted for the Fords on the right side. On the left, the Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, fuses elements of the sky and Mother Earth. In Western culture, the griffin has the head of an eagle and the body of a lion serve the same function. The half skull, half live head is another obvious duality. And sometimes the dualities can be images, like the Toltec stela right here. Whoa, did I lose? Can we move the pictures? And this column over here. And by the way, these two columns right here, along with the center totem, are representing the 3 columns you find in a Masonic lodge. And certainly this broken column right here is a Masonic symbol. Samuel Morse pose right here is the Masonic sign for I am a master maker mason. The square and compass is right here to the left of his head. Diego Rivera's father was a 33rd degree Mason, and there are 9 Masons in the mural. In Paris, Morse met Daguerre, the French inventor of photography, and Daguerre sold his patent to the French government for a princely sum, and then encouraged the government to make the technique freely available to the public. So the small images right behind Morse may in fact be photos he made when he returned home, having learned the photographic technique. Similarly, SFMOMA and its donors spent quite a bit of money moving the mural, and now it's in a free gallery. Here's a conveyor belt. Right here it goes and it turns around back over here. So the Goodyear conveyor belt moved rock aggregate for the vast amounts of concrete required to make Shasta Dam up here. The 20-mile long, 3-foot wide strip of rubber was looped to make a band to move the rock 10 miles. It was the longest conveyor belt ever built. The concrete for the dam was continuously poured for 4.5 years. Now, Rivera visited the site and sketched, and he must have dreamed of what hydroelectric power could do for Mexico. Mexico's future was never far from his mind, and helps explain why Rivera dealt with industrialists and other kinds of tycoon, despite others accusing him of having sold out. Diego would do business with the devil if it helped Mexico. Well, back in 2012, I don't know if you remember, there was some panic that the Mayan calendar was coming to an end. Oh, doom and gloom. But like the conveyor belt, these patterns don't just suddenly end, they just go around again. And this circular metaphor for time is something encoded in places like Stonehenge. But this metaphor is something we may be losing with the advent of digital watches. The sweep secondhand on analog watches subliminally kept the idea of the cyclical nature of time in our minds. The Rolex time, I guess. On the other side of the mural is an example of time as a linear function. Time, of course, is just a construct, a story we humans made up so that everything didn't happen at the same instant. We might discuss what happens to a society when its given constructs seem to lose meanings. And these different methods of viewing time are analogous to how we view light. Because I was in the physics department, I'm always working in physics metaphors. To understand diffraction, the bending of light, we depict light as an electromagnetic wave. However, the photoelectric effect, when electrons are emitted when light strikes a material, is best understood by depicting light as a quantized particle. On a digital watch, time appears quantized. It's 10:20, then it's 10:21. There is no in between. But we must never confuse the map with the terrain. These are just stories we made up, and as long as they reflect experimental results, they're good stories. When they no longer reflect what we find, we make up better stories. Peer review is a strength of a scientific method. Now, someone else is always checking out our stories. Hopefully, some of you can give me insights on my stories. This is one of my fondest wishes as the mural gets public exposure. On the left side of the mural, Rivera painted the contribution of the southern part of our continent. Here, the shape of the plumed serpent mirrors the shape of the conveyor belt on the other side, but it stands for a linear version of time. The snake head is being carved by this little boy right here who's looking up at the diver in the present. However, the tail serpentines back through time and comes out of an ancient temple. And this signifies Mexico's continuity of culture, its contribution to the marriage that Rivera is proposing. At City College, we have an authorized copy of an Olmec head. It was a gift to us from the Mexican state of Veracruz. The original was carved 3,000 years ago, long before Europeans showed. Since the Olmeca didn't have metal tools, they created the 14-ton head with rock on rock. It's a percussion masterpiece. Our replica is as old as the original. It just hadn't been taken out of its packaging until 2004. Below, you see this woman with the backstrap loom, and she mirrors an ancient woman up here. And you can see that both have the same blouse and the same headdress. These are traditions. The people working at the bottom with gold depict another aspect. A civilization's advancement may be limited by how hot a fire they can make. Well, gold makes very nice jewelry. It makes crummy tools. Hydraulic mining depicted here by the bare-chested figure holding the nozzle was outlawed because it silted up the rivers, crippling the water flow. You know, I always thought someone wouldn't be able to hold the hose. It just seemed like the pressure would be too much until the staff at the California Historical Society found such a picture. Now, this circular feedback loop of this harmful technique quickly demonstrated to others that navigation of the river was compromised and the potability of the water was affected. The slimy iridescent green catch basins still found up in gold country are remnants of a workaround to bypass the law. Today, the downside of fracking is becoming apparent. Amazingly, some predict that in the future, the density of human-made low orbit debris could hamper space exploration. To leave the Earth, spaceships would have to run a gauntlet of particles whizzing by at 25,000 miles per hour. Venturing out heedlessly, we seem to invariably leave a signature wake of human detritus. Our country recently started a space force, but many of us don't realize that everyone already is an astronaut, crew members of Mothership Earth. Because we don't look forward so well and don't pay heed to our history, every day we do things to our spaceship that you'd never see happen on Star Trek. Well, there will always be dictators like Stalin, Hitler, and Mussolini, but politics are historically fluid. 6 months after the mural was finished, Hitler invaded Russia, and the totalitarian Stalin was suddenly an ally. He was suddenly Uncle Joe. Recently, the COVID pandemic has seen science politicized, and it's evocative of Leninist physics. Facts are willfully assigned a back seat to dogma. You know, Rivera ran afoul of the Soviets' official social realism, and Hitler defined degenerate art. Locally, the Society for Sanity in Art, yeah, that's what it was really called, railed against Rivera and other modern artists. The jeopardy some San Francisco murals find themselves in today is unfortunately not new. Well, Rivera had an overriding goal: to get the US into the war against Germany. Like a master chess player, Diego had looked at several moves ahead. And unfortunately, some of our politicians then didn't even make good checkers players. Diego realized the peril to all the Americas if Hitler were successful in conquering Europe. It's the only Rivera mural where the United States is the hero. A muscular arm draped in a US flag restrains a smaller Nazi tattooed arm holding a dagger. Note that the swastika is backwards. Our mural celebrated all of the peoples of the Americas, a bold counterpoint to racist anti-Semitic groups like the America Firsters, who had a fondness for Hitler. Headlined by Charles Lindbergh and others, Firsters also wrapped themselves in the American flag and sought to find their version of patriotism. Well, Samuel Johnson had an opinion about those who, as a last refuge, invoked patriotism. Historic DNA has legs, as we saw on January 6, 2021. The Nazis found their eugenics theories in California and modeled their treatment of Jews on American Jim Crow laws. In 1939, German Bunds, with questionable allegiances, held a huge pro-America rally in Madison Square Garden, complete with fascist salutes. But later, it was the Japanese who were rounded up, like Mineo Kubo, who demonstrated the fresco technique for fairgoers on the ground floor at Art and Action. You know, our country was in an isolationist mode, perhaps not realizing that in a true world war, there is no place to hide. We were at the time sending war materials to Great Britain, so we had taken a shot aside. Collier's magazine pointed out that the Atlantic was a formidable logistical barrier to the Nazis, but that the US had a 1,900-mile undefended border with Mexico. Maybe it was time to take a Mexican to lunch. In the coming years, even Walt Disney would be making overtures to Latin America. Well, since Rivera made the reconciliation of art and science an overarching theme in the mural, I like to use scientific metaphors, as I have with time. Bandwidth. We have colors we can see, from red to violet, but we know there are colors we can't see, infrared and ultraviolet. However, every day the Hubble telescope takes pictures at those frequencies we can't see. We have sounds we can hear, or not in my case. Certainly dogs can hear frequencies we can't. Even with my hearing aids, I miss a lot. Well, we also have an intellectual bandwidth. The stuff we know. As we get older, we know more. So it happens that we can't discover anything in this whole mural. We can only recognize it. It has to be in our individual bandwidth. The mural's public display is very exciting to me because people with greater bandwidth, like you, will be viewing the mural. I'm very excited about people teaching me new stuff. In my stories, Diego and Frida become binary stars. Now, binary stars are pairs of stars bound by a profound gravity which compels them to revolve around each other as they hurtle through the cosmos. The forces that bind them are equal and opposite and have no polarity. There are no victims or villains. Obviously, the forces that bind them are stronger than the forces that want to tear them apart. End of discussion. Diego had a twin brother named Carlos who died before the age of 2. And we can imagine them as binary stars too. However, Carlos is a black hole. Now, a black hole is just a star which has collapsed. It's become so small and so dense that its gravity is so powerful that even light cannot escape its surface. So when you look up in the sky, you can't see it. But astronomers can infer it's there by how it affects its binary star. To the left of Frida, there's a little boy painting right here. I think it's Diego. He would later use this same device of him as a little boy in a mural in Mexico. In the original Sinopia, the original drawing, full-scale drawing for this, there was another little boy, and Diego didn't include him in the finished work. And if it was meant to be Carlos, like a black hole. You can't see him anymore. I think Diego missed Carlos all his life. Well, in 1999, Francesca Piquet, a Florentine art conservator, came from the Getty Conservation Institute to do a one-day survey of the mural. And she wrote, upon entering the foyer of the Diego Rivera Theater, one cannot help but be somewhat overwhelmed by the size and vibrancy of the mural. Well, this is some praise coming from someone who had just come from working at the Vatican. She told me that Diego was a brilliant exemplar of the fresco technique, and then she changed my life. She told me to think of taking care of the mural for the next 200 years. Our fresco could last centuries. After a while, I understood. This was my watch. I'm a Marine. Also, it occurred to me that since the mural would endure, it would have to be moved sometime. And she wrote, it is recommended that the advisory committee consider the commission of a more complete assessment and documentation of the condition of the mural. In 2011, I initiated the more complete assessment by hiring an art conservator, an art mover, and a structural engineer to report on the viability of the move. The head of Mexican art conservation came to confer. Then I hired cultural heritage imaging to do a photogrammetry documentation of the state of the mural. And these 1,500 50 megapixel photographs were combined to create a high resolution 3D image of the mural surface. And these huge files are now posted at Stanford's digital library. The mural's care is a metaphor for our looking ahead. As the country gets ready to get our infrastructure up to date, it's helpful to remember that sometimes infrastructural renewal is not very dramatic. And my street was dug up for a year. New pipes were laid, but now the street looks the same. But similarly, our mural team is passing forward a fully conserved, wonderfully documented, and with a mounting system for which people 100 years from now will thank us. It's all about stewardship, buying into our responsibility to the future. When we invoke our rights, we sometimes forget that they are a duality with our responsibilities. Julia and I were very lucky and are deeply indebted to the primary source material legacies shared with us. Years ago, Julia went to Philadelphia, and Donald Cairns, Emmylou Packard's son, let Julia photocopy as much of his mother's papers as she wanted. Much of these were notes for a never written book on Diego Rivera in San Francisco. Julia got John Pfluger's permission to copy all of his Uncle Timothy's papers on the mural. He'd saved a lot, like his hotel bill in Mexico when he invited Diego. Later, I found Lynn Wagner, Mona Hoffman's daughter. She's a little girl painting right here in this corner. She let me have all her mother's papers and several expensive goodies. When I offered to sell some of the photographs and give her all the money, she refused. She wanted us to have the originals. Others too have been very generous in helping us save the story. Then in Canada, I found half the raw notes, 1,000 pages, for Diego's autobiography, My Art, My Life. Julia and I were not allowed to photograph and hand to transcribe by hand everything over 4 days. Well, Julia cheated. She knew shorthand. Me, I felt like I had a nun looking over my shoulder as my fingers cramped. When I first heard of this George Gershwin postcard sent from Mexico City to New York City, the postcard was in Houston. The owner was not a big fan of Diego Rivera because he had had an affair with movie star Paulette Goddard. Well, I told the owner that if she was a fan of Gershwin, she should know that he also had an affair with Paulette. Anyway, the owner said she couldn't give me a copy of the postcard because she had given it away. She had given it to San Francisco Symphony director Michael Tilson Thomas, and the postcard was only 2 miles away. The research fairy godmothers can be very generous. MTT staff generously made this copy for me. So George Gershwin became the deus ex machina in our story. Though he is nowhere in our mural, his connection with Paulette Goddard drove much of the story. In fact, now I say that if Porgy and Bess had opened to good reviews, Frida might not be so famous. Gershwin might not have died so young, and we might have had another 30 or 40 years of Gershwin's brilliant music. As I talk in front of the mural, I was talking one time and I mentioned the postcard, and luck led me to the Ira and Leonore Gershwin Trust, who shared copies of many artifacts with me, including more postcards, letters, and color photographs that Gershwin took in Mexico. These revealed a very interesting non-romantic relationship between George and Frida. All of this new information led me to write a play about a real party that was thrown for George during his visit to Mexico in November of 1935. Here on the left is actor Edward G. Robinson with Diego Rivera and friends at the fair. I could identify all of them except for this young man in the center. Robinson always played a thug or a gangster, and you can tell the times were changing because in our mural, he plays an FBI agent in scenes from Confessions of a Nazi Spy. The 1939 movie was re-released in 1940 with added actual footage of Nazi bombers. In fact, he was a Romanian Jew, Emanuel Goldenberg, who was very cultivated. He bought quite a few works by Diego and some from Frida, but only because Diego forced him. He introduced Diego to the Hollywood community. Diego especially met many Eastern European movie industry exiles. Well, at a 1937 party in Beverly Hills that Edward G. Robinson gave for composer Igor Stravinsky, George Gershwin met and fell for Paulette Goddard. And she seemed to have that effect on many, as I found out. Tragically, George only had 4 months left to live, but he encouraged her to go to Mexico and have her portrait painted by his good friend Diego Rivera. She ended up front and center in the mural. See, everything is connected. Well, in 2007, I was contacted by Marshall McClellan, Emeritus Chair of the Earth Science Department at Eastern Michigan University. And he had told me he'd been looking at the website and seen the figure of the little boy identified as Donald Cairns. He said, that was wrong. It was actually him. Then he explained. One of the residents at his grandmother Hilda's boarding house on Nob Hill was an artist working with Diego Rivera at the fair. And Marshall used to sit and watch this artist paint in his room, and the artist had taken Marshall out to the mural. Rivera had spontaneously asked Marshall to pose for the figure of the boy. Later, Marshall returned for a second session. Well, it turns out that Marshall was the figure in the Sinopia full-scale drawing, but not the model. That's Marshall on the left, and there's my good friend Donald Cairns on the right. He's coming in a week or so for a tour of the mural with a bunch of his church member friends. And over here on the left, you can see this is Marshall in the Sinopia drawing. Well, then Marshall stunned me by confirming that the unknown figure in the photo was Johnny Cummings, the artist at the boarding house. When the US entered the war, Johnny became a B-29 bombardier and tragically died in the closing days of World War II when his plane crashed on takeoff in Burma. Well, for me, this photo brings Johnny back to life again. And Marshall said Johnny had flaming red hair. He only lived to be 25. Well, the two figures of Helen Krylinkovich, the diver, are frozen in time and space, or space-time, as Einstein might say. And these images are based on photos of her taken at the Fairmont Hotel's Terrace Plunge, now the Tonga Room, that the band's floating on the pool. She is the last figure Diego added to the Sinopia drawing. She was the best US diver in 1939, but never got a chance to shine internationally because there were no Olympics in 1940 or 1944. Since you had to be an amateur at the time to compete in the Olympics, she had to pass on the opportunity to perform in the Billy Rose Aquacade out at the fair. And that was headlined by Johnny Weissmuller of Tarzan fame and Esther Williams. You know, as a City College student, Helen was the first woman to get her pilot's license from the aeronautics program. She died of cancer at age 34. And I've given her daughter Barry and her granddaughters a mural tour. Like Helen Wills in Diego's first San Francisco mural, this Helen rules the skies in his last San Francisco murals. I think maybe Rodney and Nicky, we could start taking some questions.
Sure, Will. In fact, we had a hand raised a little bit earlier from someone who said they're Berkeley, someone whose first name is Berkeley, or that's what they put their screen name as. Are you still on the call and you want to unmute and tell us your question? And if not, I see Paco has raised his hand. Paco, go ahead.
You know, those paintings are very intriguing and fascinating. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just have to say, Will, like it just seems like you've devoted yourself to artwork that has like endless fascination. Do you continue to find new things to explore in the mural?
It's funny is ever since it got installed at MoMA where you can actually stand back from it, I've been having new insights. I've been looking to it. Well, you know, it's one of those things. I'm trying to think of what that song. I've been standing up too close or back too far. It's now I'm seeing all these dualities that I was kind of aware of intellectually, but now they're visceral because I can physically see them. And of course, the mural got conserved. It is so brilliant. The mural has never looked this good. Even when Rivera painted it, it was 14 feet up in the air. Now it's 1 foot up. You can get up close and personal. And again, I'm looking forward to people's insights.
Yeah, it's exciting that it's like 81 years old, and yet we're kind of being able to see it in a new way for the first time.
Yeah, well, you know what? A fresco continues to get brighter for the first 100 years. So this has still got another 19 years of getting brighter. And then if it's, you know, they found all these 2,000-year-old frescoes at Pompeii. The Legion of Honor just had a show. I was looking at these frescoes. So it's all been about stewardship, and with the understanding that I'm a link in a chain, a long chain of people that are going to have to take care of it. But at this part of the mural's life, what's really important is saving the stories, because the people who actually witnessed it, for the most part, are gone. Donald Cairns is still alive, but he was 5 years old at the time, so he hasn't got a lot of stories.
I see Samira has her hand raised. Samira, why don't you go ahead and unmute and tell us your question or comment? Samira, give you one more, we see you. Can you unmute?
Okay.
There you go.
I have to unmute to speak. I mean, to close my computer.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you, William. Thank you, everyone who brought this
Alright.
beautiful
How does
team.
this work?
One thing is my questions, and I'll give it's like just my comment on the before Diego Rivera gave brought, I think, to regular people like us, it's like people who didn't have higher position to see murals, to see pictures. If this is correct, if I'm not mistaken, before that, it was just seen by high class people in the community, right? So if I'm not mistaken, that was the first time that was done, and thanks to him and to also Frida and to the presenters. But my comment is, I just felt like I'm in physics. My physics class is there. For any action, there is equal and opposite reaction, and this unity, this Pan-African unity is so. I have seen this at first.
Samira, I'm afraid Samira, we're having trouble. We're having trouble hearing you. If you Samira, we're having some. No, we're having trouble with your audio. Why don't you type your question into the chat, and I'll read that question for you. And but thank you for your comments. We had a question from Vivian on how the mural was moved, and I know that we're going to be talking about that more in 2 weeks. But Will, do you want to tell us, kind of give us a brief synopsis of the effort to move the mural from City College to SFMOMA?
Yes, well, it was quite the project. As I pointed out, that the mural could last a very long time, and this was a sensibility they didn't have when it got finally installed at City College in 1961. 20 years of storage, and so consequently, it was installed permanently. It's got a steel frame. Rods were welded to the steel frame and then embedded in the wall. And so it was kind of easy to put in because the cement's molten, but taking it out now, how do you get it detached from the wall without jarring it? Because you don't want the fresco surface to break up. It's very, very fragile and only 1 1/4 inches thick. So we had the number crunching got done in Mexico, and Diego would be so proud. The National Autonomous University of Mexico's graduate mechanical engineering department and a cross-disciplinary team built models. They modeled it on the computer, but they physically built replicas of an upper and a lower panel, and then they banged on them to find out what they would withstand. It was quite the project.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to hearing more about that when we talk about it in 2 weeks. I'm just so grateful that they did. It's also you can see the support for the mural. It's visible from Howard Street through the windows.
Sure. What we did is these mural panels had been designed by Timothy Pfluger, and then a guy named Walter Huber, who has a very prestigious engineering award at Stanford named after him, did the final design. But just to kind of hedge our bet, we created a mural mount, an extra panel, which we bolted to the original panel, and which gave us a place to pick up the panels that didn't involve touching the original panel, and changed the center of mass a little bit so it was easier to pick up. And these mural mounts are now permanent parts of the mural, and they came with cleats, so it was easy to hang. So there wasn't, once we got it off the wall, there was no undue stress impressed on the panels.
Great. Well, thanks for that. We had a question earlier about that young man in the middle, and someone was wondering if it could possibly be Ralph Stackpole's son. Do you know anything about that?
Well, Ralph Stackpole's son is the boy in the middle, or the young man in the middle of Allegory of California, the mural out at the City Club. And Peter Stackpole was physically in the center of that panel. I can look if you want, and oh, maybe I can't. Come on, what happened? Oh, okay, I'm gonna.
You'll find your slide.
There it is. There he is, right there.
Okay, so he
So that's
already.
Peter.
Yeah.
So the little boy in the center of Pan American Unity is Donald Caron's Emmy Lou Packard's son. Emmy Lou Packard was Diego's primary assistant and went on to help save the Rincon Annex murals. She was an activist and a great printmaker.
Great. Speaking of people in the mural, we had a question earlier. Who is the figure hovering over a child in the bottom panel just above the right of center?
Okay, let me get down there.
That's from Connie, who's actually dropped off the call.
Right
but
here, this one right here. Oops, hang on. Let me see, I lost my current slide. No one said it was going to be easy.
No, it's good. We're getting it.
Okay, and from current slide, we're talking about this figure right here.
I think that's right.
Okay, well, my take on it, and I always put a disclaimer on it. And in fact, I think you used the E word before, expert. I never use that word. I'm an interested observer, but I think that this figure right here, hang on, laser pointer. This figure right here is Rivera's homage to Picasso's Guernica, the famous painting that Picasso had done in 1937 and showcased in Paris. And what happened with that painting is after the Spanish Civil War ended in 1939, the painting traveled around fundraising for Spanish War relief. And it turned out that the painting was physically in San Francisco at the San Francisco Museum of Art, which at that time was on Van Ness, while Rivera was painting this mural. Now, Picasso and Rivera had been Cubists together. They knew each other very well. And in fact, a few years ago, the LA County Museum did a Picasso and Rivera show. So I think that dead child, I found the drawing for the dead child at the Reina Sofia Museum in Madrid. And then when I was researching it, turned out that a French woman art historian said that undoubtedly when Picasso did that, he in fact was referring to this over here. You can see a couple of cannons right there. I'm brushing across the cannon. Well, that's a scene from Sergei Eisenstein's battleship Potemkin. And then there's a scene where Tsarist soldiers fire on undefended civilians and a baby is killed. And right in here, there is a woman with a dead child as well. So those images tied Sergei Eisenstein, Picasso, and Diego Rivera together. And there's all these kind of little webs in there, all these little tentacles that serpentine through the mural as Rivera's connecting ideas and themes and icons together. And the more I look at the mural and the more connections I see, the more I just think he was just bloody brilliant.
Yeah, there's just so many deep connections in this
Yeah.
mural.
And he's doing all this on the fly. He had no time to prepare in Mexico.
Yeah, I think the case that he was one of the great geniuses of the art world is kind of made with this mural.
Yeah, well, and the tragedy of this mural is that it's supposed to be 3 times as big. As Rivera left at the end of 1940, his many friends in San Francisco sponsored a contract for him to return and triple the size of this mural. So this part we're looking at right now was on panels. He would come over to City College to this grand library, and the other 2/3 would be painted right there in-house, in situ. But World War II segued into the Cold War, and Diego is a commie, and both Pfluger and Albert Bender died. There was nobody around to grease the skids to get Rivera here. And of course, it begs the question, what would he have painted after World War II?
Yeah, it's because this thing is so rich as it is, but it's just extraordinary to think it could have been 3 times larger.
Yeah.
There's a question that Martin asked earlier that has also intrigued me, which is, what is the significance of the Founding Fathers group, which you were just actually pointing to with those cannons nearby?
Well, there they are. And in fact, well, first of all, he's talking about the good guys as a duality to the bad guys. But these Founding Fathers right here are part of a mural that he's painting. He's showing it. That's Rivera right there. And there's this plasterer working ahead of him. He's showing you how to paint a fresco, and he depicts himself amongst other workers. So he's just another worker. He's wearing his official, probably Levi's. And so we have Bolivar, Hidalgo, Morelos, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln. And then he put in John Brown. And of course, you might realize that, well, Teddy Roosevelt is missing from Mount Rushmore there. And of course, Roosevelt's corollary to Monroe Doctrine sanctioned hanky-panky south of the border. So Rivera kicked him out and put in John Brown, who, depending on your politics, was either the first martyr of the American Civil War or just a crazy guy that killed a bunch of people. And again, what's very interesting about this John Brown too is it's a typical example of Rivera embedding information, because if you know a little bit of art, you think that, well, that John Brown is very evocative of Michelangelo's Moses, the statue of Moses at the Vatican. And it's also very evocative of God in the creation of the sun and the stars. So Rivera is putting in this metadata, and depending on your bandwidth, you'll see more or less of this. And so I'm always looking at the mural, completely understanding that there's information just whizzing past me. And so my motto is that my ignorance knows no bounds. The good thing about ignorance is you can fix it. You can keep on studying, so I keep prevailing and trudging on, and then people are very generous with sharing their insights with me.
Well, we talk about ignorance, but there's also curiosity, and you just have this boundless curiosity. I have to say, you've sparked my curiosity about this work. So that's been great. somebody, I just want to say quickly, someone asked me, there is a recording that's being made of this presentation. They want to know where they can access it. We don't have a URL yet for that, but we will get that. And if you put your email in the chat, I can make sure you'll get that information. And Richard, you've had your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question or make your comment.
Hi, Will. I have heard you many, many times speak about this mural at the mural. And today you've just gone so far head and shoulders above and beyond anything I've ever heard. I'm wondering, will you be at the mural? Are you going to do any docent talks at the museum? Your knowledge is so encyclopedic, and your perspective on this art and on Diego is such a treasure to all of us.
Oh, well, thank you, Richard. Right now, currently, you know, I'm doing this Zoom today here, and I've got a Zoom on Wednesday. I'm doing a presentation next week at the City Club. As for the museum, I go 4 days a week, and I'll chat with guests, and it was very nice before they had brochures. You can get a free brochure now, but before they had the brochure, I like to eavesdrop on people because they were inventing their view of the mural, and that was wonderful. I'll be doing a tour for Donald Cairns, the little boy in the center of the mural. He and his wife raffle me off every year at their church as a fundraiser, and the top 40 bidders get a presentation. The problem I got now is before, you know, at City College, I had the key, I had the alarm code, it was my lobby. Well, now it's not my museum. So I know for the museum, I am doing some private tours on days the museum's closed, but as far as presentations in front of the mural, the good thing is the mural is going to be there for 2 years. So I think the museum did the important thing. They got the mural up. I'm hoping that very soon there'll be regular docent talks, and certainly City College has got some tremendous docents that would be a great boon to the museum. But as far as me doing public things, there's nothing in the works right now.
Yeah, that's great that we at least have 2 years to enjoy this. Will, is there a way to follow you? Like, do you have
people follow me all the time? I can tell. I've seen all these spy novels, you know. No. Well, first of all, I've got a blog that's on the Rivera website. The Rivera website is riveramural.org, all one word, lowercase, RIVERAMURAL.org. And if you get to the splash page, you'll see newsletter. So every month or so, every couple of months, I have a newsletter. There's probably 2 or 3 years worth stored there on the website. And it's basically what's happening, some insights I may have had or whatever. So yeah, you can follow me that way. I don't do Facebook. As it is, I do an hour and a half of correspondence every day with people that write me and whatever. And so I'm loath to have something like Facebook. You'd have to chain me to the computer. So every couple of months, I'll put out a newsletter. I just sent out a thank you note to all the people that worked on this project. You got to understand, this was a dream team. The museum assembled a team, and everybody was world class, and there were no egos. Many people commented on that. They said a project this big, you'd have. No, it was this big love affair. I called last year the summer of love. It was wonderful. And of course, I had a ringside seat. I could watch all these totally competent people do their thing. And of course, as it is with people that really know what they're doing, they make it look so effortless. I was just enthralled. I'm in love with the team, and this is well, it's definitely a highlight of my life after all these years. Get the mural moved, but to get it done with such grace.
Yeah, it's a real treat. Question from Yvonne. She says, is that a forest fire or wildfire above the swimmer on the left side? Also, what is being carved? It's funny, like the very 2021 way of looking at the mural, huh?
Yeah, well, it is, but in fact, that's kind of like, you can see it's smoke or fog or something billowing down from the Embarcadero, but you'll see that below the figure, reflected in this thing, is a nude figure. And there's another nude figure above her. Diego's having a little bit of fun here.
And this same person asks, what is being carved by the man with the axe?
The man with the axe, well, there's actually three of them. Each one of them has an axe. It's Dudley Carter, a Canadian lumberjack. And of course, he furnished the Canadian part of this North American collaboration. And he was a person who lived with the indigenous people of British Columbia, learned their artistic vocabulary, and then he created his own stuff. And that's a big horn mountain ram, which is the mascot of City College. And that piece is literally in the administration building. But what happened was Dudley was just rough hewn kind of sculptor, and he finished it too soon. And I said, hold it, Dudley, there's a fair still on, you need to keep demonstrating. So they brought in this 24-foot high, 7.5-foot diameter log, and he carved the goddess of the forest. After the fair, it was installed poorly in Golden Gate Park, and half of it rotted. The part that's left is owned by City College, though we deinstalled it to give us room in the lobby there of the theater to be able to deinstall the mural.
Yes, it's a good example, a bad example of stewardship in that case.
Yeah, well, he said don't have it in contact with whatever it's mounted on, and they put it someplace where basically it was sitting in a cup. The water filled up and just literally rotted out the inside of this massive redwood log.
Oh, it's very sad. Samira's question that she was trying to ask earlier, she said, did Diego Rivera's art, was it first seen by the community, or was it seen by more of like more wealthier viewers? I think is what she's trying to ask about. Like, how much did this get out to kind of the general community?
Well, when he comes in 1930, he starts working in 1931 and does two works. The one at the San Francisco Art Institute, well, now that the San Francisco Art Institute is open again, it's really easy to walk in. But the other mural was always in a private spot, so it was inaccessible. But it was Rivera's first entree into the country, and there was a little bit of work required by Albert Bender to get a visa for Diego. So I think Diego got his foot in the door, and so it's not a very egalitarian mural because more people can't see it, but it was what it was. Whereas the Pan American Unity mural was always meant to go into this library, but ironically, it's a good thing it didn't happen. It was going to be 14 feet up because it had to be over the books. So if you go out to MoMA and see it 1 foot off the ground and then try to envision what it would have been like 14 feet off the ground, you realize that if they'd actually installed it in this Grand Library, both Diego and Pfluger would have been mortified and asked themselves, what were we thinking? And Rivera has an excuse because they asked him once, well, where do you put a mural? He says, well, you choose a wall or you take the wall they gave you. So that was the case in this thing that Pfluger is trying to kind of shoehorn it into a library, and maybe hadn't really thought it out. And because now, if he'd installed it as he planned, the upper edge, the top edge of the mural would have been 3.5 stories up. And I said they could have saved themselves a whole lot of money and just used wallpaper. So the whole thing is it's one of those happenstance where years later, we had a fight at the college about, oh, we're going to install it in, finally got a new library, right? And there was a fight between keeping it where it was, moving it to a new spot. And at the time, they opted to leave it where it was. And I was, oh man, that was what a loss of an opportunity. And now it's a good example of a duality. The fact that it didn't get moved is a wonderful thing because we couldn't move it twice. So now we're getting the opportunity to see it showcased in its most optimal way. And the other place in the library, you wouldn't have been able to get too close to it. You'd be able to get far away, but not close. So, and where it was in the Diego Rivera Theater, you could get close, but you couldn't get far away. Now at the Roberts Family Gallery, there's the benchmark. You should be able to see it close up, and you should be able to see it far away. And that's how it should be displayed.
Yeah, I think that's to me the big takeaway from this presentation is, this if you can at all get to SFMOMA and see it for yourself, this is a tremendous opportunity. I love telling people that the best artwork in the entire city that you can see right now is something that's available for free, and it's something that you'll really never forget.
You can, the other day I was coming back from a Giants game at 11 o'clock. I was walking down 3rd Street. I said, oh, let me go and look at the mural. At 11 o'clock at night, there it was showcased. So this mural is getting the exposure it's never had. You realize that Rivera, when he was painting this, he arrived and contractually the mural was only going to be 3 panels wide. It would encompass like both divers, but that's it. Those 3 panels across the middle. And Rivera almost immediately, let's make it 5 panels wide. Well, it was, it was a typical Rivera move because all his San Francisco murals are bigger than what the contract called for. The problem was he wasn't able to finish the mural during the regular run of the fair. So the fair shut down September 29th, and the mural isn't first finished and shown until November 29th. So for 2 months, he's working in this big cavernous airplane hangar with his crew and a hot plate to warm their hands out on the bay on Treasure Island in the fall. You can just imagine how cold it was. And so it was unveiled for a private viewing on the 29th. And then at the start of December, it was shown for a couple of days to the general public. So very few people relatively got to see the finished mural. Then it got crated up and it stayed in storage for 20 years. So more people have seen the mural in the 2.5 months it's been at MoMA than maybe, I don't even want to, hypothesize on that, but a lot of people have seen the mural at MoMA, and I am just so happy for the mural.
Well, I'm happy for us. And I'm happy for me because, it just immediately, even having had a buildup and knowing that this was coming, it just totally blew all my expectations away when I saw it. And you mentioned it, how brilliant it is, and that's like my first reaction. Second reaction I had was like, this is almost like watching a movie, with these scenes. They're so inviting, they're so interesting that, we can kind of see like a narrative unfolding in each of these scenes.
Yeah, or like I said, is and there's narratives there I'm not seeing. So I keep finding new stuff. Well, I've been looking at it for 25 years, and and it keeps giving back to me. So it's been a very symbiotic relationship with the mural, and a great gift in my life. And certainly my partnership with Julia Bergman for 20 years was a great gift. You know, she did some wonderful things in the world, and it's not very often you get to work with one of your heroes and have them call you friend.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who aren't with us anymore who are nevertheless looking down upon this
Yeah.
mural and this experience, and it's like it's part of their legacy. One of the great experiences I had was, I didn't know the mural that well, but I had just done this program called Downtown Deco, where we had talked about, among other things, the Pacific Telephone Building, which is right around the corner from the mural. And then going in and looking at the mural and saying that I believe that's the Pacific Telephone Building, and then having that confirmed, and you can actually like look out the window.
Out the window and look up. No, you know what? I just went on a tour, Art Deco tour the other day with Teresa Poletti. I don't know if you know Teresa.
Is that a City Guides tour, or is it related?
Yeah, it was a City Guides tour. But Teresa, many years ago, she was a reporter for the San Jose Mercury News, and she came to visit Julia and I about doing an article on Timothy Pfluger, and she ended up writing the biography. It's a wonderful book, Art Deco, The Life and Times of Timothy Pfluger. And so she gave a tour the other day, so I went on it and walked downtown, and again, all these little serendipitous things that happen over the years, and the wonderful people I've met. Oh, I meet wonderful people all the time.
Yeah, we did Downtown Deco on this show, and it was Fred Silverman, who I believe Teresa, she created that tour, and he is one of the guides for City Guides. He's also, like me, a guide for the Museum of Modern Art. You mentioned you're hoping the museum will have docent tours of the mural, and I'm hoping that very much too, because I would definitely want to be one of the guides for that.
Oh, that would be wonderful, Rodney. You know, that would certainly the City Guides tour of the mural out at City College. I always used to like to listen in, you know, because people have different views. People bring different things to the mural, and the mural says different things to them. I'm always looking to get new insights and new takes on the mural, and so yeah.
That's always what I'm after. I'm always after a dialogue, and this a great. I hope many people are going to go with friends, and maybe I'll try to round some people up and go and talk about it a little more informally, because that's what it's really for, is like to like interrogate what it has to tell us together.
Yeah, well, you just see Rivera subscribed to something called dynamic symmetry, which is a way of mathematically dividing up the mural surface. And I'm now that I can stand back, I'm just watching, basically he's choreographing your eye to make your eye jump around, so that what is ostensibly an immobile piece of art gets animated, and your eye is jumping around, and Helen is floating in the sky, but she's right at the peak of a dive, and that the very next second she'll be plunging down, and so there's all this internal tension there, and so it just Diego, just the wonder.
Nicky, you had a question. Do you want to unmute and pose your question, or you want me to read it for you?
Yeah, well, I'll ask it. Thank you, Rodney. It's so wonderful that so many people have seen it already at the MoMA, and it would be wonderful to have it back at City College. But they're bringing in a new chancellor. There's been so many changes and disruption at City College. I mean, how can we be sure that it's going to go back to that performing arts center, and have they started to build that yet? Does anybody know?
That's a City College issue, and of course the new chancellor should be named presently, and of course they're going to come in with a bunch of issues, but the future of the mural there's a contract out there, because some people, oh, MoMA's going to steal the mural. No, and MoMA's not. MoMA's given City College the best deal they ever had, in that all the work that's gone into conserving this mural, reinforcing it, transporting it, was all projects that the City College would have had to deal with before they could even move it across the street. So MoMA did a great service to City College, and so I get a little bit frustrated at people saying, "Oh no, well they're going to steal it and all that." And of course, it's, where did you hear that? Well, I just made it up. That's what, and we live in that world, right? I mean, stories are being made up all the time, and if they help the situation in a positive way, they might be useful, but mainly a lot of it's just alarmist. The deal we got, I'm the one who vetted the deal. The interim chancellor in 2017 sent me to vet the deal, so I'm intimately familiar with what MoMA offered and what MoMA's delivered, and I'm a big MoMA fan. Well, I'm a member, but I'm a big MoMA fan in that what they pulled off was something heroic. I mean, this was a big deal, and of course the Mexicans from the Autonomous University of Mexico were marvelous, and I served the purpose of letting them know that they were the fulfillment of Diego's dream. He was looking for the technology to be embraced by Mexico so they could reap the benefits of their revolution. And to see these young engineers come, and I got to spend, daily time with them, they were all so great. And I told them that they were just what Diego dreamed about. They were just so proud of that Mexico's come so far, and you wouldn't believe the analysis they did. I mean, the depth and the precision of their analysis, well, it underpinned all the design work, and we didn't have not any major problems. Everything had been anticipated. So this, and to top it off, to make this, we're always talking about 6 degrees of separation. Well, in my world, in this Diego Rivera world, it's a degree and a half separation. But UNAM, the university, sent out a postdoc chemist, and he turned out to be Miguel Angel Maynez. He was my cousin, an unknown cousin, but he was named after, he had the same name as my mentor uncle. And he came with a gun right out of Star Trek that you could put up against the mural, and it would, with x-rays, analyze the chemical composition of the plaster and of the pigment. And he was from my grandmother's hometown. So I said, okay, well, he's not a first cousin, so it's a half a degree of separation. But that's how this project was.
We did have a comment in chat from Harry, who is an instructor at CCSF.
Mm-hmm.
He says the construction, I guess, of the building hasn't begun. The design build entity is now supposed to be selected sometime in October 2021, 11 months after the contract for the original DBE was terminated. The interim chancellor claimed that the termination would interfere with the completion deadline for the Diego Rivera Theater as little as possible, but he finally asserted that the completion would not be before 2026. That is a delay of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, Harry's on top of all that. And of course, up to last November, there was a synchronicity between when the new building was going to be ready and contractually when MoMA was going to be returning the mural to City College. And I probably should have been suspicious. So so it's a big issue. It's a big issue. We don't want the mural to have to go back into storage, especially after 2.5 years of international exposure.
So TBD. But I'll just say, in my opinion, that right now, the whole thing is a huge win-win for City College and SFMOMA, and most importantly, us, the art-loving public.
And you forgot the mural.
In the mural.
For me, it's always the mural. It's a win-win, win-win. But yes, the mural, it's kind of funny is you look at, we're talking about Timothy Pfluger. Okay, well, you've got 140 New Montgomery, that Pacific Telephone and Telegraph building, now Yelp headquarters, 450 Sutter, the medical building, the look and feel of the Bay Bridge, the Paramount Theater, the Castro Theater. All of those entities are in good shape because somebody cares about them. You always got to have somebody that cares about them. So to have MoMA to step forward and provide the wherewithal of the patently obvious things that needed to be done with the mural that was going to be moved was a great blessing for the mural. They were looking out for San Francisco is what they were doing.
Yeah, they're doing their job, right? Preserving our rich cultural history, and this is kind of the premier piece for all that.
Yeah, right. Well, this is a pretty heady piece to be showcasing, and of course, the Pan-American unity. What a concept!
Yes, it's very relevant. Like, it's amazing how relevant a lot of the things we see in this mural are today. We see fascism.
Yeah.
We see questions about democracy, how the United States interacts with Latin America. So many things that are still very, very relevant in our world today.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm talking about historic DNA. All these mechanisms that happen through time, many are displayed here, and you can take something that happened back in 1940 and have a whole discussion about something that's happening in 2021.
Yeah. And you mentioned the architects that are depicted in it. And, when you talk about Timothy Pfluger and Arthur Brown,
that was in the San Francisco Art Institute mural.
Oh, okay. Arthur Brown's not in this one, but Pfluger is.
Yeah. Oh, yes, he is, front and center.
Couple more questions in chat. Sure. Jennifer asks, are any suggestions on how to explore the rich tapestry of murals we have throughout San Francisco? Is there a really good guide to all the murals that are on display?
There's various books. Certainly the Mujeres Muralistas that did the women's building, the Maestra piece. There's a book on that, and there's various books out on the muralism in San Francisco and even in California. So San Francisco Public Library's got them all.
Yeah, and I know we've had programs on City Guides has had programs on those murals that are delivered virtually, and I think we're going to hopefully get some of them to come on this show and talk about the Mission murals and some of the other murals in the city.
Alley, Clarion Alley. I was just telling somebody the other day. It says, I've lived in the room in the building I'm in now for 48 years. And I said, for me, walking around the Mission over those 48 years, whereas maybe in the suburbs, people would see people mowing the lawn, I would see people painting murals.
Yeah, it's really a great part of our cultural heritage in the city is having so many great murals. And even I love a lot of the street art we see today.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, the art, they're the mirror of our communities, where you look up there and you see what your neighbors are thinking or what they're espousing or what they're seeing. So yeah, murals are really great, a great public announcement of some kind of message.
And I suppose Diego Rivera would be very pleased that this continues to be a vibrant form of expression.
Yeah. I spent last weekend up in San Rafael with the Canal Arts. They're part of the Canal Alliance, and again doing muralism in their neighborhoods and encouraging younger people to paint stuff. And that was very invigorating, and so it's nice to see that there's a younger generation coming up that wants to embrace this, so that we have some continuity of culture.
Yep. Couple more questions. Robert asks, what is the brown hand with 4 green spots in the center?
That's the left-hand side. Left-hand side of the center icon is 2 aspects of the aspect goddess Coatlicue. The green skirt is made out of serpents, and then this lighter part is part of that same thing. But the dark brown one is part of a different incarnation of hers, where she's the goddess of women who die in childbirth. And Diego put the hand up like that. And on that other statue, there are protuberances on the palm. And Diego took it upon himself to paint them turquoise. And when people said, well, what is that? Excuse me. What does that mean? He says, well, it means the dignity of labor. And of course, he's making it up as it goes along. You can call it whatever you want. And I think he put it up there. It's just a little a locus, a little focal point in the mural, and you keep going back to that. But any meaning implied or ascertained in that is kind of up to the viewer.
Great. Well, I think we will wrap it up. Just really want to thank you for coming on this program, and great that we had so many people attending. There's obviously a great deal of excitement about this mural, and we're just so lucky that we almost have 2 more years to enjoy it.
Yeah, well, get on BART and get out and see it. Get off at Montgomery Station at the new Montgomery Station. Walk up New Montgomery and turn right on Howard Street, half a block, and you're there. You can see it. You can walk right in, no ticket, and there's free brochures inside.
Yeah, the brochure is really great. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed. I just like looking at the mural, wondering who some of these people are, and then the brochure helps you decipher a lot of that.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
that brochure is one of the little sad notes. The editors, I'm one of the 4 editors, but I'm the only one alive.
Wow.
So my 3 partners, we did good work, and it's so nice that their names are there, and that way they live on, just like we have Dia de los Muertos.
Yep.
So these people are alive for me.
That's part of what art does for us, I think, is connects us with those who aren't with us anymore.
Yes.
So Will, thank you very much. This program totally lived up to my hopes and went way beyond. Nicky, I'm sure you have a few things to add too.
I just want to thank both of you so much. This was an amazing presentation, and I still have my brochure. I picked up the 4-panel one at City many years ago. I still have that, and it's such a great guide to the mural. So this was just so amazing. It really brought to life, what we can go down and see and enjoy for ourselves with our own eyes, and just be there in the presence of this amazing treasure of San Francisco. So I'm very proud that I got to be part of today's program. So thank both of you so much. And I'm proud of the community living campaign that can bring these types of programs to you. We have another program tonight that's very popular, our old rock and roll Ruth Unterbergers doing a presentation on George Harrison tonight. So that should be really fun. William, come back and visit us. And
I'm gonna be there, Nicky.
Yep.
Thanks, Paco.
Paco's our most loyal audience member.
All right, Paco.
So
Yeah.
Great presentation to both of you.
Thank you, Will. All credit to Will.
the Community Living Campaign welcome you to come back and join more of our events. Check out our website. And if you want a calendar by mail, you can just email us, give us a call, give us your address, or just check it out online. And we'll be back in 2 weeks, right, Rodney?
2 weeks, part 2.
Program part 2, which is going to be also very interesting. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
we're going to be joined by Don Ross, who is a photographer for SFMOMA, and we're going to talk about the whole effort to move the mural. And we're also going to engage with your reactions to, hopefully many of you will get to go see it, and we'll definitely want to talk to you and hear what your thoughts are on seeing this mural. So we'll continue the dialogue in 2 weeks, and it'll be the same time, 1 o'clock on September 27th. See you guys then.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.
Have a great Mexican-American Independence Day coming up. And join us back here for some more Latino heritage. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.